Hey guys, I realize I haven't introduced you to Id, my biggest. He's about 7 years old and he's looking for a way down. He's grumpy. Ever since we got the kittens, he's been grumpy. But anyway, yeah, it's my original cat. We got him back in 2005, I believe, just a baby, and about the same size as the kittens. Born at my mother-in-law's place. Yeah, and since then we've been kind of accumulating. Now we have 5 cats and a dog. So yeah, you've met everybody except for my wife, because my wife doesn't want to be in my videos. One day I will con her into appearing on camera, but it is not this day. I wanted to speak to you just briefly about the definition of Kung Fu. See, we get these things in our heads, these ideas of definition, and it's sometimes a sad state of affairs because these grand ideas lose meaning due to constraints put on them by connotation. And I want you to understand that Kung Fu does not mean Chinese martial arts. No, in fact, Kung Fu has nothing to do with Chinese martial arts as a word or as an idea. Kung Fu doesn't have a direct translation in English, but what it comes out to mean is the expense of time and energy to master or to evolve and progress in something. And so you can have Kung Fu with a golf stroke as much as you can have Kung Fu with martial arts, as much as you can have Kung Fu with playing guitar or with, debating philosophy. It's simply an expression of the effort and resources you have put into developing something. And if you have good Kung Fu, if you are a master of Kung Fu, it's simply that you have poured so much R&D into something that it's become a part of you. And so within the martial arts world, it's all Kung Fu. It's just the Chinese expression of this idea. And that's kind of important, but it's also kind of grand. It's kind of this big thing. And we reduce it down to this little thing. We think of Kung Fu movies, Saturday Kung Fu Theater and all that. And that's great. There's a lot of skill and time invested in the performing arts you see in the movies, in the combat arts that are used in real life. There's a lot of Kung Fu involved there. But Chinese martial arts, have different names for different things. You realize that in Chinese, more or less, Chinese boxing, as it were, is Chuan Fa, which means something like fist law or fist method. It's simply, a system of fighting. It's not Kung Fu. Interesting thing bringing up Chuan Fa is going back to my Kempo roots. Kempo is the Japanese word for Chuan Fa. And the Japanese use Kempo the way we use Kung Fu. They use it in this way to mean just Chinese martial arts. There was a Kempo era in Japan, and this is where the N versus M arguments in Kempo come from. Kempo as a martial arts style started being spelled with an M, K-E-M-P-O, versus K-E-N-P-O, because K-E-N-P-O the Kempo is an era of Japanese history, certain rulership and all that, and so they were using this term to mean, this Kempo, they were defining it with a slightly different consonant sound there, just for differentiation purposes. But the idea behind it is still just Chinese martial arts. So even as a Kempo artist, for the first, literally at this point, half of my martial arts career, I was studying Chinese martial arts. You realize karate is Chinese at its roots. The Okinawan hand-to-hand style was, I mean, certainly the indigenous peoples had some ideas of how to fight, because everybody who's ever lived has some idea how to throw their fists and feet around and tie people up. I mean, this fighting is kind of built into our DNA, but efficient fighting is not, and that takes practice and knowledge and analysis. But the traveling monks helped the Okinawans develop themselves physically and strategically so that they could take on the Japanese invaders. And so, dealing with that, they ended up building in karate, and just empty hand. Some styles even just call it te for hand. But that right there, it's Chinese. It's an Okinawan, and nowadays, of course, Japanese as well. But Okinawan and Japanese expression of Chinese martial arts. And in many circles, they will refer to not the karate styles, but they will refer to Chinese martial arts as Kempo. Has nothing to do with the Kempo as we know it, the Ed Parker Kempo, the Jeff Speakman Kempo, which is of course Ed Parker Kempo, the Nick Serio Kempo on the East Coast. None of that is what they mean when they say Kempo. When the Japanese say Kempo, they just mean Chinese martial arts. And there may be a Chinese or a Japanese expression of a Chinese martial art. The Japanese tend to favor more strong, hard lines as opposed to soft circles and fluidity. It's all personal style, whatever works for you. But it's an interesting idea. And so anyway, tangent, just giving you history and philosophy ideas on the martial arts. But just start thinking in terms of what your Kung Fu is. My good brother George is a Kung Fu master of gaming. Ooh. I've never met anybody so dedicated to learning the strategy of games, and you can proudly, greatly say that his Kung Fu in reference to gaming is masterful. In fact, I would say that his experience in gaming supersedes my experience in martial arts. That's how good he is. So, just to give you an idea, this is what Kung Fu is. It's not punching and kicking. It's not, braided cues. It's not dancing around in silk robes. It is simply time and energy expended towards the development of something. So find your Kung Fu, develop your Kung Fu. When you do, tell me about it. I want to hear your story. Talk to you guys later. Good journey.